Hello my dears, welcome back to another video. So I was watching an Abba and Preach video and I wanted to kind of talk about this because Abba touched on something that I also have really strong feelings about. So I thought I'd just share with you what he said and I'll kind of give you my 2 cents on this subject. I'm going to play the video for you now to give you some context.
Preference?
No.
What changed?
I dated a white person.
What happened?
He called me a colored person, not person of color. Colored person.
I want to say something. Maybe it's just me.
No.
Maybe it's just me. How do y'all feel?
You use the other accent.
Hold up. How do y'all feel? Let me ask one. Do you want to know?
What?
Tell me. When someone approaches you and they say, "Oh, you're a person of color," don't you feel a strong innate desire to spit in their face?
Because that's a term. That's what they use.
Who's they? Who's they?
Often they.
We're people of color. Ugh, poof.
They say POC, BIPOC in the news out there.
Yeah, and they the worst people.
And they
always the worst people.
And black people use that shit too. Trust.
Oh, listen. I don't listen. In all my years of living in this state, I ain't heard no niggas ever say people of color.
The BIPOC.
You know who it is? It's the liberal, left-leaning weirdos who say that kind of shit. People of color.
What do you say?
I say black people. I don't like this whole lumping of everybody who isn't white. People of color. Think about that.
That's large as
They pretty much LGBTQ'd us. That's what they did.
You didn't.
They did. And like, yo, let's keep it a stack. If you've ever lived in America, the racial groups don't like each other.
No, it's very segregated.
So why people of color, like there's some kind of allyship. Sorry, that has not been my experience in this state whatsoever. This is what it felt like. Default
others.
And they threw everybody in the other and they're like, wear it like a badge of honor. People of color. Suck my nuts.
For those of you who follow me on Twitter, I've already expressed my views on these acronyms. I dislike these acronyms for a number of reasons. The first one, which Abba correctly pointed out, it's very othering because when you say people of color or BAME or BIPOC, you are basically saying there's white people and then there's everyone else. So we can't have our own unique identities. Like we're just everything else. It's very othering. It others white people because it makes them like very separate to everybody else. And then on top of that, it also others the rest of us because it's like we don't get to have our own unique identity. We're all just kind of lumped in together and just made into this like group. And I think that's terrible because you can't help each group of people if you don't acknowledge their uniqueness, if you don't acknowledge the fact that they have unique struggles, they have unique privileges, they have unique advantages and disadvantages. How can you really address a group properly if you can't even acknowledge their individuality? It's like even in Britain alone, the black people here are not even the same. You've got black people who come from African backgrounds, you've got black people who come from Caribbean backgrounds. These 2 groups are the same race, but yet they still have very different outcomes and they have very different experiences. So if you can have such differences in experiences between 2 people of the same race who have different ethnic backgrounds, then how could you possibly think that you can lump all of the other non-white races into one box as well and still be able to effectively tackle all of the different struggles that they have or discuss all of the pros that they have that we could perhaps apply to other racial groups to help them improve as well in society? The reality is you can't, because when you fail to acknowledge the individuality of all of these groups, you fail to acknowledge all of their unique and individual experiences as well as their unique and individual struggles. So how can you help them? It looks at people from an abstract perspective. It completely dismisses and completely disregards individuality and just looks at people from an abstract place. So to them, they just look at different groups and they're just like, this is just the minorities. That's it. Minorities, or these are just black people. These are just Asians. They don't acknowledge the different Asian groups, they don't acknowledge the different black groups. And when we look at the differences between these groups, it highlights why acknowledging their differences is essential. For example, Asians in the UK have disparities in terms of their earning as well as their home ownership. For example, 41% of Indian households earn £1,000 a week or more. This is significantly higher than other Asian households in the UK, for example, such as Bangladeshi households, where 18% of their households earn £1,000 or more. 14% of Indian households in the UK also earn £2,000 or more a week, significantly higher compared to their other Asian counterparts such as Bangladeshi and Pakistani households, where only 3% of them earn that much. And this also explains why using the general term Asians when talking about data is not sufficient enough to highlight the differences between these different ethnic groups. The same applies with Black people. Black Caribbean students are significantly more likely to be excluded from school. They also get lower grades in comparison to other Black African students. In 2021, a commission published a report on race and disparities, and within it they discussed the differences between African children and Caribbean children in the UK. Here is one of the researchers discussing some of their findings.
Every ethnic group performs better than whites, bar Black Caribbean pupils. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct, Andrew. And as I say, this is why we simply can't make this a BAME versus white issue. And actually beyond that, you get people saying, Black exclusions, for instance, Black outcomes. You can't even do that, because actually what we see is African children outperform, white kids outperform, the kind of average. And Black Caribbean kids are one of the worst performing. So even once you start saying, well, there must be racism towards Black kids because exclusions, African kids are no more likely to be excluded from school than their white British counterparts. Again, it's the Black Caribbean kids that see these high levels of exclusions. And then you have to ask yourself, hang on a second, is this institutional racism blanket explanation adequate, or is there other things going on that mean even if you're Black, your outcomes are likely to be different depending on whether you're an African immigrant or, a third generation Black Caribbean child?
The race report found evidence that most of the race disparities are due to things such as family structures, culture and class, more so than race itself. Now, naturally, of course, this caused a lot of outrage because how dare you? How dare you say not everything is racist? Some even went as far as to say that the report was a deliberate attempt to normalize white supremacy and that it was likely coordinated by white supremacists. Here are the researchers who were behind the report. Look at them. They're just oozing with white supremacy. They're practically dripping in it. I bet they only eat white rice and white bread. And I bet all their walls are white. I bet they only buy white bed sheets. You can just tell they love a cheeky bit of white supremacy, they do. Even after discovering that most of the researchers behind the report were not white, people still believe that they were influenced by white supremacy. Because Black and Asian people thinking for themselves? What is that? Never heard of it. Now, to a normal person, it makes sense that a person's class, as well as household setup, would be the biggest impact on their life as well as their outcomes. But because it doesn't fit the narrative, it's shunned as a white supremacist talking point, despite the fact that what the report found regarding single-parent households has been well documented. Even Obama, who most would not consider to be a white supremacist, has even discussed the impact that households have on the outcomes of children.
Last year, there were 443 murders with a firearm on the streets of this city. And 65 of those victims were 18 and under. So that's the equivalent of a new town every 4 months. No law or set of laws can prevent every senseless act of violence in this country. When a child opens fire on another child, there's a hole in that child's heart that government can't fill, only community and parents and teachers and clergy can fill that hole. There's no more important ingredient for success. Nothing that would be more important for us reducing violence than strong, stable families. Which means we should do more to promote marriage and encourage fatherhood. Don't get me wrong. As the son of a single mom who gave everything she had to raise me with the help of my grandparents, I turned out okay. But I think it's, so we got single moms out here. They're heroic what they're doing, and we are so proud of them. But at the same time, I wish I'd had a father who was around and involved. Loving, supportive parents. And by the way, that's all kinds of parents. That includes foster parents, and that includes grandparents and extended families. It includes gay or straight parents. Those parents supporting kids, that's the single most important thing.
And when we start to understand this information, we start to be able to make sense of the racial disparities. Indian households have the least broken homes. They have the highest rate of two-parent households. So when you accompany this with a lot of their core values, is it any wonder why they do so well and have such great outcomes? Especially when we contrast them with the demographic that has the highest rates of single-parent household, which is the Black Caribbean children, which have higher rates of school exclusions and also achieve lower grades. And this is why I get frustrated when people make racism the only thing that we talk about when discussing Black issues. The real question should be, why are our families not staying together? Why are there so many broken homes in Black communities? How do we fix that so that our children can have much better outcomes? These are the type of conversations that we really should be discussing if we actually want to start making improvements within Black communities across the UK. But overall, my point is, when you look at people as abstracts, that's why you create these acronyms like BAME, POC, people of colour. But the problem is people are not abstracts. We're individuals. We have individual experiences. You don't acknowledge the individuality of different groups. You don't acknowledge the individuality of individual people. And so therefore you think you can just lump them all in and do a one-size-fits-all rule. And that's how you fail people. Because when you continue to look at people as abstracts, you fail them every time, because there will always be people who fall through the cracks because your viewpoint is too narrow-minded to see all of the people who don't fit into your perfect ideological box. I don't know why anyone would think it's progressive to erase the individualities of minority groups. How is that remotely progressive? I'm just going to completely erase all of your individualities, and I'm just going to call you BIPOC. I'm just going to call you BAME. I'm just going to call you POC. I look forward to the day when we move past these acronyms, because I think that they're not helpful. And Abba and Preach, I know they were joking around, but even with the LGBTQIA plus acronym that they kind of reference, I've seen a lot of people also say, like people within the LGBTQ plus, say that they are tired of this acronym.
Are there some people who appreciate having LGBTQIA plus be a thing that exists? Do they feel like it helps them be seen or their friends be seen? Anybody here?
So no one
at all?
Okay.
Sometimes it just gets to be too many damn letters.
It's a lot.
You know what I'm saying?
It's a lot.
Seriously, like, it just, you adding letters on. So like sometimes I appreciate it, and then other times I'm like, it's too many damn letters. Like,
so me personally, I'm all in favor of the collapse of these acronyms. There may be some overlap, but there's also going to be a ton of differences. But you can't acknowledge any of those differences if you refuse to acknowledge their individuality. So yeah, I 100% agree with Abba that these labels are terrible. Like I don't like being called POC, and I find the whole POC term funny because it's like calling someone colored in the West is offensive. Like in Zimbabwe and South Africa, we call mixed race people colored, and it's not offensive. It's just that's just what they are. You have black people, white people, and colored people is used to describe mixed race people. It's not offensive. It's just a word. And I just find it interesting because these words all mean different things in different parts of the world. And in the West, it's so offensive. But yet somehow person of color isn't offensive. I think someone tried to explain to me that the reason it's person of color is for the same reason why we say people with disabilities, because people usually say disabled people, but then people were like, no, you have to put the person before the disability. So therefore it's person with disabilities. And so that's why it's people of color, because they were like, no, you have to put the person before the skin color. So it's people of color. And I just think you're just long-winded. You're all very long-winded. I don't see why are we doing this? But that's it for this video. I would like to know what your thoughts are. Do let me know what you think about these acronyms. Maybe you are part of the LGBT yourself, and I would like to know what your thoughts are on the acronyms. And also maybe you're a POC person as well, and I'd like to know what your thoughts are on the acronyms too, because I just think that we would be much more productive without them. I don't think it helps. I really don't think it helps us in any way whatsoever. And it also, like Abba says, creates this false idea that there's allyship between the minority groups. Like there is racism that happens between people of color all the time, but we don't get to talk about that. We only get to talk about white people versus all the other races because of the way we've set it up. We've set it up to be white people versus everyone else. But I would definitely be interested to hear your thoughts on these acronyms. So do let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, you may as well like and subscribe. I am also on other socials, and I also make music if you'd like to check me out on there. Thank you very, very much for giving me your time today, and I will see you in my next video.